This is Scott Flint, and I am the Senior Chief Instructor here at Westwind Schools. Started back when I was a teenager back in 1977, and been doing it ever since. Just love doing it. Today I'd like to make a little video to help people who are learning Kata 5. In the Kempo system, it's called Short 3, very similar between the two systems, but I'm hoping that the video can help to at least be a reference for people who've already learned the kata, who'd like to get a little bit better on the angles or the definition. So I'm going to walk through the kata just slowly so you get an overall view of what the kata is like, and then we're going to break it down step by step. And it is possible that you could learn Kata 5 just by watching this video. It's probably recommended though to have your own instructor teaches it to you so you can see the application and get more detail, and just use this as a reference. When you watch it, it's probably good if you're watching it on YouTube to press down in the lower right hand corner. There's a gear icon. If you press that, you can control the playback speed. You can maybe go down to quarter speed, turn off the volume so that you can just see better what's happening, and then you can maybe go 2 or 3 techniques in and then stop and then review it over and over and over before you watch the next part of the video. It is a pretty complex form, and it's the first time for the practitioner that they're learning an asymmetrical form. So in the other forms prior to Kata 5, you would do a sequence on the right side using your right hand, and then you would go immediately and practice it on your left hand. So there was nice symmetry, makes it pretty easy to learn. But in Kata 5, it's our first time learning a asymmetrical kata. There are many asymmetrical forms, but they're harder to learn. They can offer a lot of really good things that can help us as martial art practitioners, but it's a little bit tricky. I'm just going to walk through the form for you, and what I'll do is turn around the other way so that if you're in your living room and you're doing the kata, it'll make a little bit more sense to you. When teachers face toward the student and they go through a form, it's a little bit harder to follow because your brain has to kind of reverse it in your own head. But I'll do it the same way you're going to face, and we'll just go through it slow, and then we'll break it down. So I'm going to step back a little further so you can see better. Go about right here, face the other way. So I know you couldn't see all the detail, but it just gives you a general idea of the form, the different moves. So when we learn it, it's good to think of like a giant clock to help us to know the angles. Some forms just have like a cross. They have back and forth, side to side. And other forms have that, but they also introduce like an X at 45 degrees. So when we're thinking about the clock, that fence will be 12 o'clock, and over to my right, at 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Back behind me where you guys are, that's 6 o'clock. And then the other ones we'll deal with would be 45 degree angles or diagonals. And those are a little bit harder to get, but we'll give that a clock designation too. So the first thing we do in the form is the traditional Chinese salutation. And we're just showing the weapon in sheath like we have in the previous forms. But we are not starting in a horse stance. This time we're starting with our feet together, hands at your side. When we take our right foot, we step forward with an instep step or cross step. Right hand is in the weapon, left hand is in the sheath. But this is pulled back by your right ear. So you're twisting your body. Then you move into a left cat. As you move into the cat, right as your foot lands, you present the weapon in sheath out in front of you. So you're in a deep cat. Pause for about a full second, then step back with your left foot way back into a bow. Roll your hands away, and then step back, feet together, hands come back to your side. So you're presenting the weapon in the sheath, and then you're coming back, and you're going to start in on the form. This form is all about dealing with self-defense techniques that involve grappling. Somebody's grabbing your wrist, somebody's grabbing your kimono, somebody's grabbing your waist, someone's grabbing you in a shackle hold, an arm lock, grabbing you and punching you, but they all have some dealing with a grab. Usually people who are getting grabbed often are not intermediate or advanced people in the martial arts, because those people usually can see things happening sooner. They're more dealing with punches and kicks, but beginners certainly often are getting grabbed. So it's good to learn this form, to learn these techniques. Back a long time ago, you would learn the form, but you wouldn't learn the bunkai or the application. You would just learn just how to perfect the movement, to get it just right. And you would study it for years and years and years, but your Sifu, your instructor, wouldn't really divulge what's happening until they really had perfected the form and also knew you well, knew you were a person of good character. And they would show you how the techniques work. But Ed Parker, who is the founder of the Kempo system, a big part of our lineage, very important person in martial arts history, he had the idea of, let's take these techniques out and let's teach it to people early, because that's probably when they're going to need to use it, when there's somebody who's new to the martial arts. And then we'll also teach the katas with it to help them have a way to practice these really cool techniques. So the first technique in Kata 5 is, we call it the two-headed serpent. It's somebody grabbing you from the front and they're pulling you in. So you're going to go with their force and kind of use it against them. As they pull you in, you take your right foot, you step in to a horse stance, a side horse, which stops them from being able to pull you. At the same time, you're firing a reverse punch with your right hand down low into the groin. Your left hand goes up over and from behind and punches into the face. So you're actually hitting two targets at the same time. You're hitting the groin and the head as your right foot steps in. So your body mass is coming in to give that energy. And the harder he pulls you in, the more power is pulled in to the strike and the harder he gets hit. So we're using his power against him. Pretty cool. So it's called the two-headed serpent. I'm going to show it to you in this direction first. So your hands are back, your right foot steps in. Right as your foot lands, you want to try to make these two make contact. So get these things moving before your foot even really starts to move, and that way you can time it with your stance. The stance is low and deep to give you support. You want to lean in with your body a little bit to get the two arms to be the same distance. And then you're going to take your right foot and you're going to step out toward 45 degrees, or if you're thinking about it on the clock, if you just stepped in to 12 o'clock, you'd be coming out to about 2 o'clock. As you step into the horse stance, you're going to fire a right inward block. Left hand goes into a set position. This is designed to try to get his arms off of you. By you taking that step out, you have more leverage to be able to get that arm off of you. And you twist into a hard bow, and as you twist into the hard bow, you pull your right hand back to a set position. This is designed to further knock those hands off of you. Probably you loosen them up when you hit them in the groin and the face. So you're just making sure you're getting those hands off of you. Inward block with the horse, outward block with the bow, and then you strike into the eye. So we're going to use a single-fingered eye dart supported by the other finger, thumbs tucked in. It's going to go from the outward block position. It's going to go to the eye, and it's going to reach in a little bit of an angle with your forearm. So it isn't just there, but it does advance toward the eye. That eye dart's going out toward 45 degrees this way. So if you're on the big clock, it's about 10:30 out this way. It's a two-headed serpent. So you're going to step in, fire the Chinese U-punch, then inward block, bow stance, outward block, tight set position, eye dart, twist your body into a horse to add power to a twisting karate punch. As the other hand comes back to a tight set, fire to the head. That's the end of that technique. So you got pulls you in, hit him in the face and the groin, knock his hands off, drive your finger into his eye, and as his head is drawn back, fire a punch into the jaw or into the temple, fight's over, you would cover out. So in Kata 5, you have that technique built into it. It's a way to practice that technique. The next thing you do in Kata 5 is you come into a cat stance. You fire 2 eye darts at the same time. This is a transition type step. It takes you from one technique to the other technique, but it could be used in a fight. Somebody was in tight, they're right up in your face, they're grabbing you low, trying to reach into your pockets, trying to get you in a bear hug. They're low, not protecting their head. You could just come up into the eyes with those single-fingered eye darts. And right into the eyes. They're going to be pretty close together. The human eyes aren't very far apart, about like that. And that's going to be a real effective weapon to stop somebody. When we do it in Kata 5, we go into the cat stance. We fire, but we don't really stop. We go in, we lift up, we step off to our right side into a deep horse stance. And we're going to fire double, right as our foot lands, double falcon's talons. And sometimes it's called 2 dragons fighting for the pearl. But a falcon's talon, kind of like a peace sign, but kind of opposite of peace. You indent the index and middle finger, and you put your thumb out in the middle. It almost looks like you're holding a hard ball, like you're about to pitch. But that's designed to go into the eyes. In this case, we're just showing the full Nelson technique where we break out of the guy's grip. Put this in a full Nelson. This also works for a bear hug. We're breaking his grip. But in the kata, it looks a little bit different. It's going to be the 2 falcon's talons symmetrically done off to the sides. At the same time your foot lands. Some parts of katas are disguised so that only with your teacher's direction would you know the bunkai or the application of how it works. So this is an instance where that's true. If this was just getting ready for a street fight only, you would have a really powerful, pronounced locking position coming down with your elbows hard into his forearms to break his bear hug or to break out on his full Nelson. So I'm going to turn around the other way. Let's review what we have so far. We have a 2-headed serpent. Inward, outward, eye dart, punch. So that's 12 o'clock. Now I'm going out toward about 10:30, up this way. Now I'm going to go to cat stance toward 12 o'clock. Double eye darts. Then horse stance out toward 3 o'clock. Double falcon's talons. I'll take my left foot, come in toward my right, and then around behind my opponent's leg to drive my knee behind their knee. So I come in, around behind, horse stance. And as I do the horse stance, I'm going to fire an elbow to the head, hammer fist to the groin. I'm also going to turn my hips into a hard bow to give me more power and more reach with this hammer fist to the groin and this elbow to the head. So I got behind his leg and I knocked him over my leg, drove my knee behind his knee, Anytime you hit behind a joint, it causes the person to collapse, and then that exposed his head and his groin. So I hit those two targets at the same time to get rid of that opponent. So that's just dealing with another attack. So the first guy's in front of you, two-headed serpent, guy pulls you in. Then there's a guy behind you who either grabs you in a bear hug or a full Nelson. You break his grip, circle around behind his leg, and hit two targets at once. Now we're becoming a little bit more advanced in the martial arts. Often when we hit in self-defense, we're not going to go strike, strike, but we're going to hit two places at the same time. A little harder to do as a martial artist, but better in a fight. The premise is when you use two weapons at the same time, it's something that the guy can't block both of them. One of them is going to get in, and also it's a way to inflict more damage in a shorter amount of time. And when you're in a mass attack situation, you have multiple attackers, you have to condense time. If you're going to survive, you've got to be able to put a lot into a very short amount of time to get rid of that assailant so that you can move on, you can escape, or you can deal with the next person. So we have the two-headed serpent, we have the full Nelson, then we have an opponent grabbing us from the shoulder. We're going to move back into a cat stance. We're going to bring our weapons back on our hip. Sometimes we call that hidden hand technique. We're hiding it from the opponent, and we're going to knock his arm off with an outward block to break free of the grip. We're going to twist in and fire a punch to the guy's head. This has been done in Kata 3 and Kata 4, and now we're doing it in Kata 5. It's a pretty cool thing to do in a fight. You're knocking away a punch or you're knocking away a grab, and then right behind it is your own punch. So they hide back, the opponent can't see them, and then they drive in. When we drive in, we're also going to be stepping into a deep horse. That adds our body weight and puts us in a very stable position. So all the power of that punch is supported and does a lot of damage. If you have a strong punch but you're not stable, it doesn't inflict very much of its energy, so you lose out a little bit. So what we do in our system is we practice fairly deep stancing, pretty deep horse stances, deep cat stances, high cranes, deep bow stances, deep neutral bows. All the stances are kind of overdone beyond what we need to do in a fight. What we know about street fights is the excitement, the adrenaline causes our body to tighten up a little bit more than it should. So if we've practiced really deep, like Northern Shaolin box horse stances, in a fight we'll come up a little bit, but we're still going to be good. We're going to be stable. We're going to be able to impart a lot of damage and be stable. We don't get knocked over. If we train higher, but then get excited in a fight and lose that depth, probably not going to be effective. We might even get knocked over, or we might get our knee broken. So when we practice, we do practice fairly low. So we did two-headed serpent, we did full Nelson. And the next one, we hit our hands, we struck off to the side. Let me now demonstrate that technique.